have a very important session that's on right now. We have Jerusha Rath, who is who's here from South Africa. Good morning, Jerusha.
Good.
The session is on what Brand Studio is all about and how they enable a connect with customers. And she is head of Brand Studio 24, which is 24.com's in-house native advertising agency. Jerusha leads an award-winning and talented team of editors, designers, writers, videographers, and strategists, all with a mission to tell stories with journalistic excellence and commercial impact. She was among the 28 women selected internationally for the Pointer Institute's 2018 Leadership Academy for Women in Digital Media. She holds an MBA from WITS Business School in Johannesburg and has a particular interest in sustainable commercial solutions for the future of digital journalism. Thank you, Jerusha, for being here. Tell me, journalistic excellence and commercial impact, is there a marriage possible?
It doesn't sound like it could be possible. It sounds like these two things should never, ever be in bed together. But the reality of the situation is nobody knows how to tell stories better than journalists. The journalists who are sitting behind their computers and listening to this know their audiences, they know how to tell stories, and they know how to tell stories in a way that is extremely impactful. So why shouldn't media organizations leverage that storytelling ability to make revenue in order to continue paying our journalists? Now, I'm not saying that journalists in the newsroom need to be involved in commercial work, but as I take you through my presentation, you'll get a better understanding of what we do.
Great, over to you.
Thank you so much for having me today. I'm going to say the most famous words of 2020 and 2021. Can you hear me? Can you see my screen, etc., etc.? So when you're able to see my presentation, please let me know.
Yes, we can see it. We can see it.
Excellent. Well, good morning from Johannesburg. It is 7 a.m. here, and I must apologize in advance if you hear some noise coming from my home. It is because I have a baby who is very sick. So please forgive me if that is the case. Thank you so much for the very, very generous introduction. My name is Jerusha. I'm calling you from South Africa, Johannesburg, and it's very special for me to be here with you all today. I'm going to talk to you about Brand Studio 24, and it is an organization or an institution in my organization that brings together excellent journalism, storytelling, and marries it with commercial impact. So we like to ask everybody that we speak to, what's your story? Because we believe that everybody has an impactful story to tell. Some of you journalists sitting in the room might think that advertisers or commercial partners don't have as impactful story to tell as you might think. But the truth of the matter is that whether you are coming from the newsroom or whether you are a brand, everybody has a story to tell that can move your audience. And our job is to find that story and then leverage it in a way that creates revenue that helps us to sustain the future of our newsrooms. Just a little context about where I come from. I am part of 24.com. 24.com is South Africa's largest publishing house with 16 million people who visit our sites every single month. I realize in an Indian context that it might not sound huge, but certainly in an African context, it's sizable. We're the largest publisher in South Africa. We believe we're the largest publisher in Africa. We're certainly up there in the top 3. And what I do is I lead our native advertising studio. Now, I'm sure many of you in this room are very familiar with what native advertising is, but for those of you who are not, let's take a moment to pause and just think about what native advertising is. So it's paid content. I'm talking about relationships with brands. We call them our partners. And what we do is we create beautiful, engaging storytelling for them that matches our publication's editorial standards. We have to meet our audience's need and we have to meet client expectation. That is the absolute bottom line. Now, am I suggesting that I take independent journalists from the newsroom, partner them with brands, and ask the journalists to compromise themselves by creating branded or sponsored content? The answer is never. We have a very, very strict, what we call Chinese wall between editorial and commercial. We never ask our journalists to get involved in commercial work. We don't even ask our journalists to get involved in loading these stories in the CMS or even tweeting about it. Never. Instead, what I have is an independent team of journalists, former journalists, who we like to joke have gone over to the dark side. Journalists who, like me, have realized that in order for us to sustain our extremely powerful newsrooms, we have to have revenue. We have to make a sustainable future for this industry. And who best understands what journalists need than journalists themselves? And so we have a team of former journalists who have an interest in business who come over to my side of the world and who create this content on behalf of brands. I like to explain it like this. When you think of your newsroom, you think of those incredible journalists hitting the ground every day, telling stories on behalf of India. In my case, telling stories on behalf of South Africa. Well, what my team does is we tell stories on behalf of the brand. We tell stories on behalf of our partners and advertisers. As I've just listed here, leading publishing houses, including Time, Forbes, the Wall Street Journal, the New York Times, the Guardian, and of course ourselves, have all launched native advertising studios because we realize that the way to connect with an audience is through stories. So, what can branded content marketing really do? I mean, why would you waste your time on something that is so complicated? We know that good storytelling takes time and it takes investment. You need to keep all the journalism standards. You need to have multiple sources. You need to have interesting, engaging content. Why on earth would I spend all this time doing this when I could really just place a quick banner ad? Or perhaps I could place a piece of copy in between an article text and it's an image that links out to a brand site. Why would I take all this time to create stories for brands? Well, the reality of the situation, and everybody in this digital room knows this, it's that stories are really what hooks the user through emotion or delight. You know, we can entertain, we can really pull on people's heartstrings. Storytelling is the thing that makes a social statement, and we're able to use multiple mediums. So through the way that we're able to tell our story, we can use videos, we can use podcasts, we can use written content, we can use infographics. We have all these different tools available to us to be able to tell the brand's stories. And the other thing that we're able to do that perhaps other more traditional advertising units are not able to do is we're really able to highlight a brand's value and to build consumer trust with the brand. So perhaps my job every day is not to quickly sell a product on behalf of my client, but my job is to educate the public about the sentiment around my client's brand. I want to tell the user who's reading this piece of content, hey, this partner really cares about you. This is what they're involved with in your community. And so really it comes to building trust and engagement with our user. Now, for the business heads in the room, you might be thinking, well, that's very nice. We can tell stories all day, every day, but show me how this has commercial impact. How are we going to derive revenue from this? Well, those of you who are familiar with marketing and the marketing funnel, I'm going to show you through this slide just how we are able to drive our user down that conversion tunnel and to meet all the specific needs for our advertisers. So bear with me. I know that there is quite a bit of writing on this page, but if you have a look at it, I will be able to explain it to you. So how do we do native content? Well, I like to tell people that there is an element of storytelling or native content to meet any brand's need and to meet them exactly where they are on the conversion tunnel. If we have a look at the top of the conversion tunnel and we look at awareness, perhaps there is a brand who is not necessarily wanting at this stage in their brand journey to make a quick sell. Instead, what they want to do is sentiment. They want to really have an audience understand who they are, what they are about, and they would like to build sentiment in a particular environment. A little bit later on, I'm going to show you some sentiment campaigns that we have done that have fundamentally shifted our users and South Africa's view of an insurance company of all things. I'm going to show you that example a little bit later. So if we're looking at the top of the funnel and we're looking at awareness, well, what we would suggest to our client is to come on board and create content with us in the way of themes or hubs. So here you can imagine a special editorial project, although of course it's created by my team. And what we're going to do is perhaps we will align these topics with what we call editorial calendars. So in South Africa, we have, as I know you do in India, very specific days around parliamentary activities. Very recently, just last week, our Minister of Finance delivered the budget speech. So while my colleagues in the newsroom are working on the breaking news about what is the minister saying, we're able to partner with a brand on a sentiment campaign, and we can run a series of articles, hubs, videos, podcasts to say, this is what Minister Tito Mboweni, that's our finance minister, has said. So how does that impact you? And we can partner with a finance brand, a banking institution. We can use their experts, and we can build sentiment to show that this financial institution doesn't want you to buy one of their products, doesn't want you to open a bank account. They just care enough to give you the information. And suddenly we're building awareness. This brand is top of mind for consumers because they now have really a share of voice in this space, and their experts are the ones who are being trusted. Excuse me, my slides are running away with me there. Well, then we move down to what we call the consideration funnel. Now we want to move users towards perhaps making that purchase, but not quite there. We want them to consider. So here what we're thinking is perhaps the themes and the hubs have served their purpose of creating awareness around this content. Now let's move into the consideration phase, where what we're able to do is we're able to build those relationships more closely between the user and the brand. Now what we do is perhaps we do some promotional features on the products and services of this financial institution. In the awareness phase, we were offering helpful advice, content that you would find in any newspaper at any time. It's relevant to any stage of your life. But now as we move to consideration, we think, this financial institution perhaps has this business banking product that might be worthwhile for my business in this economy. We tell the audience a little bit more about that. Perhaps you're a young professional and this bank has the perfect young professionals package for you. Well, in the consideration phase, we are going to tell you more specifically about the products, but we're still going to do it in a way that tells an excellent story. So perhaps we're going to interview a young businessman or a young professional, and they are going to tell their stories about how these specific products help them get their career off the ground or get their business off the ground. Finally, we move down to conversion. Client has had a wonderful relationship with us and has spent on awareness and consideration. And often they come back to us and say, we love your stories, but now we need to sell something, please. And that is perfectly fine because that's what we do. And so in the conversion phase, what we're able to do is we're able to be a little bit more direct. Often at this phase, my team takes a step back and client will supply us with their advertorials, which is content written by client. And often, those advertorials are much more obvious than our subtle storytelling, saying, if you would like to open up an account for business banking or young professional banking, click here and we'll call you back. So as you can see, what we're able to do is that we are able to go all the way down that marketing funnel in creating awareness at the top, consideration, and then eventually converting. This is something that we're able to do in partnership, of course, with the other commercial units that are in my division. When we're at the top of the funnel, for instance, my team are very comfortable in this space because we're all former journalists. But when we get to the bottom, to the conversion, I might lean on my programmatic team or my performance marketing team and say to them, listen, client wants to convert. How can you help us with the relevant ad units around our native advertising? I'd like to take a moment and just pause and talk about my specific team and what we do, because I know it sounds crazy to think that we can have journalistic quality and commercial impact. I'm going to pause here and just tell you a little bit about my story. I started as a bright-eyed, bushy-tailed journalist 11 years ago as an intern reporter in Pietermaritzburg. Pietermaritzburg is a very interesting place in South Africa. It's a tiny, tiny town, but it is politically important and it might be of interest to my audience here today. There is a very large South African Indian community in Pietermaritzburg. South African Indians, for the most part, are sixth generation, us having arrived in South Africa in 1860. Our great grandparents were indentured laborers who were brought by the British to South Africa from India to work on sugarcane plantations. And when I was in 2010, when I was the intern reporter at this newspaper, we were telling the stories of the anniversary of the 1860 Indians who arrived in South Africa, who were our ancestors. There was so much great storytelling to be told. But in the 10 years that I was in the newsroom, I started to notice that newsrooms were getting smaller. We all know this. As I progressed in my career and moved over to digital, I started to realize that the colleagues around me were often losing their jobs. Or perhaps we were fighting with the likes of Google and Facebook for audience retention. Things were becoming increasingly difficult in the South African landscape in terms of revenue to support journalists. And I knew that through this incredible career that I've had, starting off as an intern at the small newspaper in Pietermaritzburg, and eventually working my way up to managing editor of South Africa's largest newsroom, News 24, I knew that if I really cared about the media and I really cared about my role as a journalist, what we really needed was people on the business side who understood journalism and who came from a journalism background. We have incredible commercial teams and advertising teams, but many of them come from business. They come from a sales background or a marketing background. Very few people sitting on the commercial side of the world came from the newsroom. And so I reskilled, I studied my MBA, and moved over to the business side because I knew that I could provide journalistic quality to our advertisers with commercial impact to sustain the future of our newsroom. So this is what we do. We create unique content that adds value to readers and aligns with the client's message and objectives. Because I knew that a client could be giving a specific message until the cows come home, but if they're not really engaging the user in what they're saying, they're lost. They might as well not create that content or spend that money. So what I do is I bring my experience from the newsroom together with the business experience. We always take a journalistic approach to crafting stories. Often a brand might say to us, in this piece of content, this is what I want. But I'm able to go back to them and say, have a look at what our audience is interested in. Have a look at how we tell stories in a way that is impactful. Would you consider taking a different approach? 9 times out of 10, They agree, they take the different approach, and they see the benefit of taking a journalistic approach to crafting those stories. And finally, we bring our audiences and brands together on our trusted publisher platform. And my team is made up of talent from media, marketing, and journalism backgrounds. And the results have spoken for themselves. We are an award-winning team, having won these awards that I've listed here. You can have a look at them. The Digital Media Awards for Africa in 2018, 2019, 2020. We were awarded bronze this year at the Content Marketing Institute Global Awards. And in 2017, 2018, and 2019, we were awarded the IAB South Africa's Best Publisher Award. What I want you to note here is that when we look at these projects that I'm listing that we have won awards for, all of them have been top of the funnel. All of them have been awareness. They've been content campaigns where we have been speaking to South Africans in partnership with the brand, but we've never been driving home a brand's message about selling. Instead, we're telling sentiment campaigns. Mzansi Through Her Eyes was celebrating women in South Africa. The Anthem Project was celebrating South Africa's beautiful national anthem. Sponsors of Brave was celebrating our frontline workers. And so here you can see that often the great results come from just sticking to your guns and telling excellent stories. So you might think I have an absolutely enormous team, a whole newsroom of former journalists creating this content. I don't. This is my team. We are very small. We all come from media backgrounds, marketing backgrounds, journalism backgrounds. We are a small, scrappy team, but the belief is that what we do well. Now I would like to show you an example of our work. Now, videos often go wrong, but let me see if you're able to hear. That's all work that we've done in partnership with our brands, but with that journalistic quality. I think we might be running out of time, so I'm going to fly through some of the next slides so that I can get to the case studies, because I think that might be interesting for everybody watching. So some of the biggest hurdles. We know that nothing in life is perfect, and often we end up with this. The three biggest hurdles that I experience when it comes to my day-to-day work is time, budget, and brief. And we all know that sometimes clients can have this type of expectation, but not necessarily this type of budget. And so what do we do? I'm going to pause on this slide so that you're able just to have a look at this. And I hope that I will be able to stay in contact with some of you or make my slides available to you so that you can go through this in a bit more detail. I won't talk through all of it, but these are just some of the examples of how we try and find solutions to those hurdles of time, budget, and brief. My favorite one here is, look, we might not be able to reproduce the Eiffel Tower on a paper mache budget, which we often have, but we can produce a creative and interesting paper mache replica. And so I find that honesty, transparency, and just really taking clients into your confidence and showing them the realities of what it takes to create a beautiful story helps us to manage everybody's expectations. When you're in this environment, just remember, clients don't understand journalism, and journalists often don't understand the business client side of things. But if you're able to bridge that gap and you're able to educate clients on just what it takes to make beautiful storytelling, and you're able to educate the content creators on your team on some of the pressures that clients are facing in this economic environment, then we all get together and work together very well. I would like to show you a couple of case studies. For the purposes of this, of course, these are all South African clients and South African brands. But my ask is that when it comes to the specific statistics, of course, I have permission to share with clients. But if on the next slides, we don't tweet out to the specific advertiser, but rather just enjoy the case study, and you are more than welcome to tweet out any learnings from it without being specific to the brand itself. So let me show you, I'm going to show you a video, and then we're going to talk about what we've seen.
News24 and Outsurance asked South Africans to share their unique renditions of the national anthem.
The national anthem is all about embracing our country, bring us all together, whether you're black, white, Indian, or colored.
The national anthem was invented in 1897 by Enoch Sondonga. It gave people a hope that one day God will bless Africa.
The public response was overwhelming, with 216 videos submitted, more than double the campaign goal.
This is the one song that 99% of South Africans know or should know.
No matter how diverse you are, it brings you together.
It represents us as South Africans.
When the votes were counted and the 3 finalists chosen, 1 million rand in cash and prizes were given to their nominated charities. A phenomenal 8 million votes were cast, with an incredible 1.2 million active and engaged readers on the site and a massive 4 million page views. The Anthem project reached far and wide and was a resounding success.
We realize this is a prayer for our country, and it really means a lot to us, and we hope that our prayer will be heard.
It symbolizes the diversity of South Africans. Asks for unity.
This is a song of hope. It's a song of peace.
It showed South Africans the power of our unique anthem to inspire us and bring us together.
This one thing that we have in common always brings us together.
News24 and Outsurance.
I am so proud of that project because, as I'm sure many of you are aware, South Africa is not without its problems. We have our own issues around racism, corruption, certainly high levels of crime and violence against women. And we were able to, in an extraordinary way, unite the country around one thing that we have in common, our national anthem. And would you believe it was done in partnership with an insurance brand? And we were able to show the country that this insurance brand actually has a heart and really cares about our country and our future. Here we see the statistics, 8.5 million votes cast. It's extraordinary. 1.2 million engaged users. We were 216% over target in what we promised client we would deliver in terms of user-generated content, and 1 million rand, which is a fair sum of money, a large sum of money, was donated to charity. Now let's have a look at our next study. This has got to do with Volkswagen.
Today is the day that we finally launched my children's healthcare product, Keep Safe. I am so nervous. Every kilometer, every sleepless night, and every obstacle in between has finally led to this moment. And I couldn't be happier to show people what it is that I've been working on. This sabbatical has been quite challenging. I've run this race flat out for the last 3 months and I am so tired. I think I need a sabbatical after this, but in a good way, because it means that I've worked incredibly hard and I couldn't have done anything more in the 3 months that I was given. But I must say, despite every obstacle, despite every challenge, I've been able to create something incredible and I can't wait to share it with people. I know that people's lives are going to be changed through this app. This final stretch has seen me prepare for the launch. I've had so many calls, emails, securing venues, making sure that everything is ready for us to launch this prototype. Although the launch may mark the end of my 3-month sabbatical, it's actually only the beginning of an amazing journey to come.
What we did there was we partnered with VW and we gave them a crazy idea that only a journalist can come up with. What if we ran a competition and the winner gets 3 months fully paid by Volkswagen to go and live out their dream or live out their passion project? And that was the winner. She was a healthcare professional and she got 3 months off to launch a healthcare app to help rural communities. 430,000 engaged readers, 489,000 total page views, an average time on page of 2 minutes 22. Our benchmark is generally 1 minute 20, so that's really good. And this is just to show you that a beautiful sentiment campaign doesn't mean nothing for an advertiser. Volkswagen went and sold 472 Touaregs. And just to give you an idea of return on investment here, the cost of the campaign cost them 1 Touareg, and they went and sold 472 hereafter. I'm going to pause here and ask if I have time just to share one more case study before we open it up to questions.
I think we've kind of done with time. And we have one question, which I think I must ask, though.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, go ahead. Thank you, Jerusha, for this lovely presentation. We have a question which is on how much is the revenue from branded content as a percentage of the overall digital advertising content at 24?
That's an excellent question. At the moment, our split is between 15 and 16% of overall revenue.
All right. And you've not had any resistance from the newsroom, have you?
We anticipate that we might have resistance from the newsroom, which is why we are very strict about keeping this separate. We never involve the editorial team or expect them to do anything with our partners, and vice versa. We keep it very, very separate. But having come from the newsroom for 10 years, my goal is to create a campaign that makes my former colleagues in the newsroom jealous. And I must say, I've done it a few times.
Okay, one last question that I have is, has there been a time when you've told the newsroom, hey, listen, why have you given a big spread to this thing when I could have made some money off it?
No, never. A good example will be now as we are rolling out the vaccine in South Africa. Our healthcare workers are currently being vaccinated. And I have 2 big clients that are pharmaceutical companies. The obvious thing would be to try and do sponsored content around anything related to the coronavirus. That would be extremely unethical. So what we've done is the newsroom runs with completely independent editorial coverage of the vaccine. And then I'm able to go to these pharmaceutical companies and say, if you would like to sponsor some content, my team is the one to talk to. Leave our journalists alone. They're doing work for the country.
Super, Jerusha. Thanks a lot. We've run out of time, so I'm going to end the session here. For those of the audience, you can end the session and as always, go back to the timeline and get to the next session. Thank you very much, Jerusha. Have a good day. Stay safe.
Thank you for having me. Thank you, everybody.